You're listening to the Cambridge Insider Podcast. On this episode, hosts Mariah and Stephen discuss ICEF's recruitment analysis for 2025. This episode is sponsored by Morgan Park Academy. Founded in 1873, Morgan Park Academy in Chicago is a co-educational college preparatory independent day school dedicated to preparing students to pursue the highest levels of education excellence with emphasis on independent thinking and scholarship. Thanks for listening.
Cambridge Insider Podcast time. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first episode of 2025. Mariah Thompson, my co-host. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm officially living back in New York. I feel like we always have these conversations on this podcast. So for those who keep listening, I'm back in New York, living here. It's where my family's from. So just starting out the new year, pretty cold, but pretty good.
It is cold on the East Coast as we record this. I think it's only right for us to also obviously share our heartfelt sort of condolences and thoughts and prayers that are with everybody on the West Coast that have experienced devastating fires. We know that a lot of our school partners that we have that side, host family community, students, fortunately, everybody has reported as safe and secure, but there's a lot of devastation and loss, and our thoughts and prayers, certainly from Cambridge Network side, is with all of those people. I'm excited and I want to talk about a lot, but I know we've got to stay time focused today. So I know that, Mariah, we're going to start off with a little bit of a sort of a review of what we saw towards the end of 2024 and in 2024 as a year, and then heading into 2025.
Yeah. I think for the end of 2024, so now I've been with this company for almost 5 years. So right at COVID started, and just joining in, this was really when we were shifting what digital marketing looked like, what recruitment looked like for everyone. So I'm so used to this type. But as you are working with our partners and doing like the hands-on talks with schools, it seems like there is still this convincing factor that this is the way the market is. But on the same sides, the ones that are going into it and agreeing with it, we're seeing results that match what we're saying. And so what is there anything you want to speak on that, what you're saying, before we get into the meat of the article that we want to talk about too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd start off by saying data doesn't lie, right? And we try our best at Cambridge to get up-to-date data, to do a lot of sort of research to make sure that we have data to back up a lot of the claims that we make and a lot of the things that we say. So you're right. There's been one of the frustrating things for me working with our partnerships and programs is that there is certainly a hunger for change. Schools are constantly having conversations with us about, I want more recruitment. I want a change in my international program. How do we adapt to what's happening? Things have clearly changed, but how do we get to that point? Which is what we do at Cambridge Network. And rightfully, like you said, the schools that have adapted what we've said, for the most part, and our data backs this up. We've done numerous episodes on this. The schools that have adapted those have done really, really well, recruitment-wise, financial-wise, admissions-wise, program-wise. But we still see a ton of schools that are hesitant to change from, very simplistically, from what we saw in 2016, 2017, which was a agency-led model, face-to-face networking. That was the marketing model that we used, the recruitment and admissions model that we used, to where we are today at the beginning of 25, which is 100% a digital market. People are more and more continuing the trend of using devices, using cell phones, using social media, using digital formats to connect with people. And recruitment and admissions is driven by that. And we continue to see hesitation from our schools and from our partners that want to change, but they are hesitant to move in that direction, despite what the data says.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because once you use the digital marketing and social media platforms, things like that, once you have that, it's the catalyst that almost enters back into the old model, right? Like the old model of agency, or that personalization, or that connection to a student. It really is the catalyst. So it's like we aren't fully removing the old. There's just the step that has to be added now before that. And we're seeing that a lot with our school partners that are in the longevity of it, because just with marketing in general, it usually takes some time. It takes some years to grow a reputation on the market. It takes some time for people to like, oh, I remember this name. I'm gonna keep going back to this ad or back to this company. So it does take some time, but we are seeing it. And or not just us, because we have relationship too in these areas. Like people in Southeast Asia know who Cambridge Network is. They're familiar with our name. But we are also not the only ones that are seeing that this is the style of what recruitment is now. And so that's what we wanted to get in today. Because yes, Stephen mentioned that he's frustrated, but it's not a frustration of like anger. It's just like we know that these schools are good, and we know that our students would thrive at these schools, and we want to give them the opportunity. And so now we're seeing with data, this is the way. And so it's like almost we're trying to convince someone that this is the way.
Yeah.
And so, but now we have some more data of our own, but there are other credible sites and organizations that are seeing it as well. And we want to just keep providing you more data and more instruction, because at the end of the day, we know that the money makers, deciders for schools and organizations, they're looking for data and they're looking for resources that prove it. And so that's why we're here to help you, give you more resources, give you more data to help back when you're going in to fight for your program, to get that funding. These are just tools that you can use that help support it. Anything to add before we jump in to that article?
I mean, to your point, your earlier point on the frustration, it's frustration over unrealized sort of potential, right?
Yeah.
We know the potential that our students have within a certain context, within a certain school program. We know the potential that our school programs have to meet that need, and we're just struggling to get there with some partners, and that happens, and we understand that's part of it, and that's part of our job as well. And we hope that Cambridge Insider Podcast can give you a little bit more information as you take that role on. I did want to mention one other important thing. You said that what we're seeing with the digital is that there's this sort of loop back to where we were, where a lot of the in-person stuff is gaining traction again, 1000%. The biggest change from today versus 2016 is that you need to brand yourself before you can go abroad, before you can be in person, before you can make your case in person. You've got to somehow rise from the pack. And the way you rise from the pack, the way you distinguish yourself from a very saturated market, is to brand yourself. And you need digital marketing platforms to do that. Okay, and whether you do it through Cambridge, whether you do it independently, whether you try and find somebody else to do it, the reality is that digital platform is going to give you the opportunity to brand. But let's get into this article, because like you said, we have this data independent of what we're saying and what we're researching at Cambridge and ICEF. I know many of our listeners, know ICEF and know the institution really, really well. They bring out a ton of really, really good research every year, and they've brought out this really, really captivating article about trends to look out for 2025. And again, Mariah Thompson, I don't know where you find the time, because I know your schedule. I don't know where you find this stuff, but you're a genius at just unearthing research. So I appreciate it. And I know Mariah will, put this research up on our show notes, this link to this article, so that you can go and independently read it for yourself. I wanted to go over, and Mariah and I wanted to go over some of the trends that the article highlights. And again, go and read it for yourself. But I want to start off by saying the following, and this is the direct quote from paragraph number 3 or 4 in the article, where it says, the author says, the time for guessing is over. Demand for study abroad is volatile and fast changing. Students are considering an ever wider range of destinations and institutions. Committing to data-backed strategies is the only way to remain competitive and to maximize return on investment. So there's a ton of directions we can take from that. The reason I wanted to highlight it is a couple of things, right? I think it so well encapsulates where we are. The idea of this volatile, fast changing, market is super important. I love the fact that they've spoken about data-backed strategies, which is something that we've spoken about in the early part of this pod. But I also want to just focus on that maximize your return on investment. A lot of the pushback we get from schools is about money, where they say to us, yes, Stephen, I understand it's digital, but we do not have the money to do this. The reality is that 90% of those schools, give or take, are spending money on their international programs in places that today, in 2025, in a digital world, is simply put just a waste of money. An international website, as an example, or an international section of your website is something that you can really minimally invest in, simply because the access to that website from abroad, from Southeast Asia, where many of your students are coming from, is almost non-existent. There are too many firewalls, there's too many restrictions, there's too much curtailing of content to make that a worthwhile investment. Yet many of the schools come to me and say, oh, Stephen, I hope you can get us students this year. We have this great new website. And they've spent probably 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 or 7,000 US dollars to outsource making the section of the website where they could have used that on a better digital spend. So it's just one example of we got to think creatively. We understand at Cambridge that school budgets are tight. There's no doubt about it. And we appreciate and we respect that, but we have to think creatively about how do we invest in making a digital footprint for our programs.
Yeah, and it's so in the article, this is under the first trend that they have, and it's demand and revenue optimization. So if you're trying to follow along with that, there is a section that is catered to just telling a school what to eliminate. Because like he's saying, you're putting funding towards something, but now it's like, I need to put it in the right areas. And so this article lays out 4 bullet points that is a good elimination, but it's where you can pivot the money. And I do want to highlight them because you might be thinking that you are putting in your money in a place that is good, but like this data is saying, it's not. And so the first one is a large scholarship where a smaller, more targeted one would have been just as effective. So where you're placing scholarships is a way that you're putting your money in the wrong place. A campaign aimed at a city where there is no intrinsic demand. And so I know when we talk to schools, there's a lot of like, yeah, I have a lot of students from this country. I really want another one. And so you want to put money into that other one, but the demand there is low. So you're placing your money in a place that's never going to get bites on.
But
so that's
also, and I'm going to just stop you there, Mariah, understanding that diversification doesn't always mean moving out of a country. What we've seen through Cambridge Enhanced Marketing, through our digital efforts, is the diversification that we can get within a certain region, within a certain country. When you talk about students in the West versus students in the East versus students North and South, the different cultural components that they bring to a campus, there's huge diversification at play there that schools need to be aware of.
That's good. The third one is a program priced so high that it's impossible to sell. So looking at your prices. And then the last one is additional campus services or a facility expansion that students don't care about.
Yeah. So, I mean, right. Yeah. And this is exactly what we do at Cambridge. When we have conversations with schools, we are talking through a lot of those, quote unquote, I think the article uses costly mistakes that schools are making, right? Where can we put money? Where can we put our focus to make sure that we are giving ourselves the best opportunity to recruit students? There's another part, I think, just before that in the article where they talk about what are your game changers for prospective students. What are the things on your campus or in your program that are going to be the wow moments for students? And I do want to talk a little bit to that as a follow-on to what you said about making those costly mistakes, right? Thinking a little bit about academic support, number one. And how are you offering academic support? If you're doing it independently or if you're doing it through an organization, but also how are you communicating that academic support? How does a student know? And this is trend number 2, where they talk about personalizing your communication. But how does a student know that gets a flyer, right? Electronic or paper, that gets a flyer. How does a student know what encapsulates your academic support? Who is going to be the person to give them that academic support? So again, when we think digital, the opportunity to be able to talk about St. Mary's Online Academy, our flagship, academic support that we offer to students. Cambridge enhanced marketing and our digital component gives us the platform. It gives schools the platform to be able to talk about SMOA or their independent academic support services or the additional support services that they offer students. So important to think about those game changers on your program, but also think about how do you communicate those game changers.
Yeah, that's good. And I think it does lead into the next trend, which is personalizing communications. If you're ready for that, I am.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, so what Stephen was saying is that through the digital, you already have grid and platform with students and with parents on the digital sphere. And so you're able to more easily go in and personalize even outreach, but even further than post outreach, like your retention with students and parents, like keeping the student at your school while they're already there is much easier through a digital communication, especially when they're cross seas. So what this trend is saying is personalizing communications. Generic emails are not just going to cut it anymore. Students are used to personalization in their shopping. And so create landing pages tailored to different segments of your audience. These pages should highlight the most relevant information to the visitor, increasing the likelihood of engagement and conversion. And so what that means for both ends, we have the first part of just communication. You're able to connect with them, see their interests, talk to them. But even before you get there, it's how your landing pages are catered to the audience that they need to have, and knowing them and knowing what they're looking for and the type of information they have.
Yeah. Do me a favor. If you're a school, you're listening to this, you're going to be traveling abroad, specifically to Southeast Asia. Go get yourself the strongest VPN that you can get, which is going to allow you to quote unquote get past the firewall. Go onto your school website and see what accessibility you have and see how that content translates and comes across. And remember, in addition to that, that somebody is reading that content in their second, third, fourth, fifth language. So again, when we're talking about personalizing communication, we're talking about the first part of this, which is recruitment, personalizing that message, personalizing that communication, making sure that if Mariah is interested in my program, I can have a landing page, which we do through Cambridge Enhanced Marketing. We have a domain in Hong Kong. We build out a landing page where people anywhere, I always use the example, they can be on a train in Shanghai and they can access that landing page and they can read it unrestricted, all the content available for them with links to be able to send in questions, applications, enrollment, your queries. So that's the first part of it. The second part of that personalizing communication, which I think is super, super important, is students that you have currently. So when you personalize the communication for your students that you have currently, and I think this is a vital cost-free option for schools, is thinking about how do we keep these students. We often talk in the international market about the gold standard of marketing, which is that word of mouth, right? If somebody vouches for your program abroad and they speak to an agent or a family member about it, that is the gold standard of marketing. But you have to achieve that. You have to work for that. And part of the way in which you work for that is you give them that support. You make them walk away after a year or a semester going, wow, I felt so supported. I had great communication. I felt like I was heard. Part of what we've done at Cambridge in the last couple of months is unveil our learning coach. Many of our partners are starting to talk about and have been introduced to their learning coaches, but that is aimed at, again, personalized communication and making sure that when students have a need, we have options for them academically, but we also socially and emotionally can support them on a person-to-person basis so that, again, hopefully they walk away and go, that experience with that school, with that organization was incredible. They talk to somebody else and you get that return back on that investment through, increased enrollment and applications in the next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it all for the personalization communications. So let's just move on to the last one, with trend number 3, which is on the ground representation.
Yeah.
I would think that you would know more about this than I do because you go on the trips for on the ground and you're speaking with agents more than I am. So if you want to kick us off for this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big part of our focus, and I mentioned this earlier, and I apologize because maybe first part of 2025, my thoughts have been a little displaced, but I hope everything has come across. But we spoke a little bit about how the trend has been digital has almost forced a re-energization of the traditional model where more and more people are meeting in person. But the important part of that is the branding that you get beforehand. So yes, recruitment trips are an essential part of any marketing strategy that we have. And all of our Cambridge Enhanced Marketing partners are being invited on those recruitment trips. However, a part of the conditions for them being invited is we need to do branding work before they get there. I always say this to schools. I don't want you to go on a 10-day trip and shake hands and introduce yourself for 24 hours a day, because that's not going to help anybody. I want you to be able to get there and an agent or a family goes, oh, this is Mariah from this program in Texas. I want to speak to her about a student I have, or I want to speak to her about a program that she has, because those are the conversations that lead to more longer term admission success. And that's really what we're trying to do. So when we talk again about schools coming back to us and saying, oh, Stephen, Cambridge Enhanced Marketing or a digital approach as a whole is too expensive. Are you spending money right now going on recruitment trips without being branded? It's likely a waste of money. So think about how we're spending our money. Mariah said it perfectly, how you can pivot some of that spending, right? And how you can brand yourself first, and then we can lead that into, yes, we've got recruitment trips, so that you can go and have conversations that are a little bit more meaningful.
Yeah. And when I was reading through the article, there was one bullet point of how they express how to do this. And I thought it was just on the other side of what we do with Cambridge partnerships, which is the retention side of how to keep our students wanting to come back. And the last bullet part, I'll just throw that in there. And it says, an in-country representative who sets up fancy events with great food and successful alumni speakers and shares the video testimonials of happy current students. Now, they're talking about when they do that in-person recruitment trips. But I also wanted to add, like we do that, right? Like we have so many examples of a lot of our partner schools going over and being able to do that with students and parents. The other aspect of this when it comes to Cambridge is that we have that in-country representative and we have a U.S. representative that is doing that with the current students on their campus once they're already there. And so your marketing for yourself doesn't end just when the student is in your school. You have to continually be with your student. And why as a parent can you spend thousands of dollars a year for their student to come over? And so it's just like kind of this like full circle moment of like your marketing and branding your school does not end once the student has said, yes, I'm coming. It's a continuation of signing that student who most likely, if they're coming from Southeast Asia, they're going to be there for 4 years. And so it's just a continuation why your school is branding the way they are. And so we have the pre and then we have the post marketing that we think applies to this as well for on the ground representation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I would love to continue talking because this is honestly one of the better articles that I've read in the last couple of months. Again, Mariah, thank you for unearthing this. We'll put it on our show notes, and we can certainly entertain and address any specific questions that anybody has. Feel free to drop us a line. All the information on how to get hold of us is in the show notes as well. Mariah, any final thoughts from your side?
No, I was just thinking if you have any questions or any thoughts from this article or anything we said, please, I'll put in the show notes our email address. If you're already a current partner and want to know more, you know how to reach Stephen. But anyone who is new, the email will be in our show notes. So please just send us an email. We love to do a free consultation with you, talk about your program, talk about what we could do to help you.
Absolutely. To all of our listeners, we appreciate you. Remember to like, listen, subscribe, and we'll catch you around the next episode of the Cambridge Insider Podcast. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Cambridge Insider Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to never miss an episode. For more Cambridge updates, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Have a great week and stay connected.